The massive research ship drifted silently through the asteroid field at the edge of known space. Commander Reed stood at the main viewport, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the endless field of rocks spinning slowly in the void. After 30 years of searching ancient space ruins, he had developed a sense for promising sites. This one felt different. "Commander, you might want to see this." Dr. Blake's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. Her tone carried an excitement that made Reed's antenna twitch with interest. He made his way to the research lab, where the young archaeologist was studying the latest scan data. Her silver scales gleamed under the bright lab lights as she pointed to a cluster of unusual readings. "Look at these energy signatures," she said, bringing up a detailed hologram. "They're incredibly faint, but they form a pattern. Something massive is hidden in this field." Reed leaned closer, his outer eyes focusing on the data while his inner eyes studied the visual representation. "Could be natural formation," he said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't true. The pattern was too regular, too precise. "Permission to launch exploration drones?" Dr. Blake asked, already programming the flight paths. Reed nodded. "Approved. But maintain distance protocols. The last thing we need is to trigger another ancient defense system." 6 exploration drones shot out from the research ship, their small forms weaving between the asteroids. For several hours, the bridge crew watched in silence as the drones mapped the area. Then, suddenly, one of the drone's lights illuminated something that definitely wasn't an asteroid. "Freeze frame," Reed ordered. The image stopped, and everyone on the bridge gasped. Hidden among the rocks was the nose of what appeared to be an enormous warship. Its dark hull was covered in layers of space dust, but the sleek design was unmistakable. As the drones continued their survey, more ships became visible. Not just one or two, but dozens, then hundreds. "It's a fleet," Dr. Blake whispered. "An entire fleet, perfectly preserved." Reed felt a familiar disappointment settling in. "Probably another remnant from the Third Empire era. We find these abandoned fleets every few years." He started to turn away, but Dr. Blake grabbed his arm, a serious breach of protocol that showed just how excited she was. "No, sir, look at the design patterns. They don't match any known species. Not the Third Empire, not the Crystal Collective, not even the Old Masters." Reed turned back to the scans, his antenna now fully erect with interest. She was right. The ships followed no design pattern he had ever seen. They were beautiful in their simplicity, yet something about them suggested tremendous power. "Bring us closer," he ordered. "Full shields up, all sensors at maximum." As their research vessel approached the ancient fleet, they could better appreciate its scale. The smallest ships were the size of modern cruisers, while the largest dwarfed anything currently in service with the Galactic Council. "Sir," one of the sensor operators called out, "we're detecting internal atmospheres in some of the ships." "After all this time?" "Impossible," Reed muttered, but the readings were clear. Somehow, these ships had maintained their internal environments for what must have been thousands of years. Dr. Blake was practically bouncing with excitement. "Commander, we have to board them. This could be the discovery of the century." Reed studied the scans again. Everything about these ships violated what they knew about ancient technology. They should have degraded to dust centuries ago, yet here they were, seemingly waiting. "Prepare a boarding team," he finally said. "Full containment protocols. Dr. Blake, you're with me." As they suited up for the expedition, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The fleet hummed there in space, silent and dark, but something about it felt aware. "Sir," Dr. Blake said as they approached the nearest ship in their shuttle, "if these aren't from any known ancient civilization, who built them?" Reed had no answer. In all his years of archaeological exploration, he'd never seen anything quite like this. As their shuttle's lights illuminated the huge ship's hull, they could make out strange markings unlike any ancient script he knew. "Whatever we find in there," he said, "I have a feeling it's going to change everything." we think we know about galactic history. He had no idea just how right he was. The boarding team's boots clicked against the ancient ship's floor as they entered through an airlock that had opened with surprising ease. Their lights cut through darkness that hadn't been disturbed for thousands of years, or so they thought. "This doesn't make sense," Reed muttered, checking his suit's readings again. "The air in here is still breathable. How is that possible after all this time?" Dr. Blake moved her scanner slowly across the walls. "The metal looks almost new. No decay, no rust. It's like the ship was built yesterday." They moved deeper into the vessel, following corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. The design was elegant but practical, with none of the fancy decorations common to other ancient civilizations. "Look at this," one of the junior researchers called out. He was standing in front of what appeared to be a control panel. As they gathered around, the surface suddenly lit up with a soft blue glow. Reed jumped back. "Nobody touch anything. Standard protocol for active tech." Before he could finish, the entire ship hummed to life. Lights flickered on throughout the corridor, and the air circulation systems began working as if they had never stopped. "Sir," Dr. Blake's voice shook slightly. "The other ships, they're activating too." Through the ship's viewports, they watched in awe as vessel after vessel lit up across the asteroid field. It was like watching a city wake up at dawn, but this city was made of warships larger than anything in the modern galaxy. "Return to our ship immediately," Reed ordered. "We need to report this to the Council." But as they turned to leave, a hologram appeared in front of them. It showed complex data streams in an unknown language, flowing too fast to read even if they could understand it. "It's running some kind of diagnostic," Dr. Blake said, her scanner working overtime. "The ships are communicating with each other." Back on their research vessel, Reed sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. Their response came quickly but wasn't what he expected. "They're laughing at us," he said in disbelief, reading the Council's message. "They think we found another useless relic fleet." Dr. Blake looked up from her data analysis. "But sir, these ships, their power readings are off the charts. The technology is like nothing we've ever seen." "The Council is focused on the Unity Empire's latest attacks," Reed explained. "They don't have time for ancient history." As if to emphasize his point, another priority message came through. The Unity Empire had just conquered 3 more border systems. Their unstoppable fleet was pushing closer to the core worlds every day. "Sir," a sensor operator called out, "the ancient ships are moving." They watched as the massive fleet began to arrange itself into a perfect formation. Ships larger than cities moved with impossible grace, taking positions as if preparing for something. "More power readings," Dr. Blake reported. "Whatever these ships are, they're not just waking up. They're preparing for action." Reed felt a chill run down his spine. Preparing for what? Before anyone could answer, every screen on their research vessel suddenly displayed the same symbol. It was simple but somehow familiar, though Reed was certain he'd never seen it before. "That's not from any known civilization," Dr. Blake said, quickly sketching the symbol. "But look at how basic it is. Most ancient races used complex symbols to show their power, but this is almost too simple." Reed studied the mysterious symbol. "Send another message to the Council. Tell them." He was cut off by a massive energy surge. One of the ancient ships had just activated what appeared to be a weapon system, but unlike anything they had ever seen. The energy readings were beyond their ability to measure. "Sir," Dr. Blake said quietly, "I don't think these ships are just relics, and I don't think they woke up by accident." Looking at the fully activated fleet before them, Reed could only agree. The Council might be laughing now, but he had a feeling they wouldn't be laughing for long. Something told him these ships hadn't been waiting all these years just to be put in a museum. The real question was, what had they been waiting for? Dr. Blake hadn't left the research lab for 3 days. Empty food containers littered her desk as she stared at the strange symbols they downloaded from the ancient fleet. Something about them tugged at her memory, but she couldn't figure out why. "You need to rest," Reed said, entering the lab with a fresh cup of stimulant drink. "I can't," she replied, accepting the drink gratefully. "These markings, they're not random. Look at this pattern here." She pointed to a sequence that repeated throughout the text. "It's like they're building blocks, making bigger words from smaller ones." Reed leaned closer, like an alphabet. "Exactly. But it's not like the crystal formations of the old masters or the energy patterns of the Third Empire. It's so simple, almost like." She stopped mid-sentence, her scales paling to a light gray. Without a word, she pulled up an archive file from Earth, the homeworld of humanity. It was a basic cultural exchange document, the kind every species shared when joining the Galactic Council. "What are you doing?" Reed asked, watching as she scrolled through Earth's historical records. "Testing a crazy theory," she muttered. She stopped at a section about ancient human writing systems. Her hand shook as she placed the alien text next to examples of early human writing. Reed's four eyes widened. "No, that's impossible." But the similarities were undeniable. The ancient fleet's markings shared basic structural patterns with early human writing. They weren't identical. Thousands of years of evolution had changed them, but the foundation was the same. "Humans are newcomers," Reed said, but he didn't sound convinced anymore. "They only achieved spaceflight 300 years ago." "That's what everyone believes," Dr. Blake said. "That's what the humans themselves believe. But what if?" She pulled up more data from the fleet's computers. What if they achieved it before? Long before? The lab's main screen filled with newly decoded text. Dr. Blake's translation program, modified to account for the connection to human language, began converting the ancient messages. "Look at these dates," she whispered. "If these logs are accurate, these ships are over 10,000 years old. And they were built by humans," Reed finished. "But why would they hide this? Why would they pretend to be a young species?" Before Dr. Blake could answer, an alarm blared through the ship. On the main screen, a priority message flashed from the Galactic Council. The Unity Empire had launched a major offensive, breaking through the Council's strongest defenses. "The Council is asking all ships to retreat to core worlds." Read. "The Unity fleet, they've developed some new weapon. Our shields can't stop it." Dr. Blake barely heard him. She was still reading the translated logs, her eyes growing wider with each line. "Commander, listen to this. Project Sleeper activated. Fleet hibernation protocol engage. Estimated wake-up time. When they are ready." "When who is ready?" "Humanity," she said. "These ships weren't abandoned. They were waiting. The original humans. They didn't disappear. They chose to start over. They erased their own history." Reed stared at the ancient fleet through the lab window. "But why?" Dr. Blake read further into the logs. "Here's something. We achieved too much, too fast. Our power grew faster than our wisdom. Rather than risk repeating the mistakes of those who came before us, we choose to begin again. Our descendants will rediscover their heritage when they have learned to use power wisely." Another alarm sounded. The Unity Empire's fleet had just destroyed a major council battle group. Their unstoppable advance continued. "The ships are moving again," Reed observed. The ancient fleet was shifting formation, its movements more purposeful than before. "Sir," Dr. Blake said, reading the last translated log with trembling hands, "I don't think these ships were waiting for just any humans. According to this, they were waiting for humans who had learned the cost of war, who had experienced being the underdog, who understood the responsibility of power." "You mean?" "They were waiting for humans exactly like the ones we know today. The ones who joined the galaxy peacefully, who helped establish new laws protecting younger species, who are about to find out their ancestors left them one hell of a gift." Reed finished. The research ship's bridge was chaos. Emergency signals flashed everywhere as reports of the Unity Empire's advance flooded in. Reed watched helplessly as another Council defense fleet vanished from the tactical display. "That's the third fleet lost in 2 days," he said grimly. "Nothing can stand against their new weapons." Dr. Blake burst onto the bridge, clutching a datapad. "Commander, I've translated more of the ancient logs. These ships, they have defensive systems we've never imagined. They might be our only chance." "The Council still won't listen," Reed replied. "They say we're wasting time with old ruins while real battles are being fought." A massive explosion lit up the tactical display. The Unity Empire had just destroyed one of the Council's major shipyards. Their new weapons somehow bypassed all known shield technologies, turning the strongest defenses useless. "Send them this," Dr. Blake said, transmitting data to Reed's console. She had matched the energy signatures of the Unity Empire's weapon with information from the ancient fleet's database. The old humans encountered similar weapons. These ships were specifically designed to counter them. Reed studied the data, his antenna twitching with growing excitement. "Even if you're right, we can't activate the fleet's weapons. None of our crews can interface with their systems. Then we need to find someone who can." Dr. Blake pulled up the last transmission they'd sent to Earth. "The humans must be told. These are their ships." Before Reed could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive Unity Empire battleship emerged from hyperspace barely 1,000 kilometers away. Its weapon ports were already glowing with deadly energy. "Evasive action," Reed shouted, but they all knew their small research vessel stood no chance against a Unity warship. The enemy vessel fired. Reed closed all 4 eyes, waiting for the end. But the blast never came. "Sir," the sensor operator called out. "Look!" One of the ancient ships had moved between them and the Unity battleship with impossible speed. The enemy weapon splashed harmlessly against its hull, not even leaving a mark. More Unity ships appeared, responding to the first one's signal. They surrounded the ancient vessel, weapons charging. The old ship just hung there, silent and dark. "They're going to destroy it," Dr. Blake whispered. The Unity ships fired together, their combined weapons capable of destroying a small moon. The ancient ship's surface flickered for a moment. Then, nothing. It was completely undamaged. "Now that," Reed said with a smile, "the Council might actually notice." But the ancient ship wasn't done. A soft blue light pulsed along its hull, and suddenly every Unity vessel went dark. Their weapons powered down, their engines died, and they drifted helplessly in space. "It didn't destroy them," Dr. Blake said, checking readings. "It just turned them off, like flipping the switch." "Send everything we have to the Council," Reed ordered. "Every scan, every translation, every bit of data about the human connection. They can't ignore this anymore." As his crew rushed to compile the information, Reed watched more ancient ships moving to protect civilian installations from Unity attacks. Not one fired a lethal shot. They simply neutralized every enemy vessel they encountered. "The logs were right," Dr. Blake said softly. "The old humans learned that true power isn't about destruction. These ships weren't built to win wars through violence. They were built to end them with minimal loss of life." A priority message flashed on Reed's console. The Council was demanding immediate information about the ancient fleet. The same Council members who had laughed at their discovery were now falling over themselves to learn more. "Should we tell them who really built these ships?" Reed asked. Dr. Blake smiled. "I think the Unity Empire is about to find out anyway. The real question is, are modern humans ready to reclaim their ancestors' legacy?" Another Unity fleet appeared in the distance. The ancient ships moved to meet them, their formation perfect, their movements graceful. They had waited thousands of years for this moment. The storm was here, but humanity's forgotten guardians had finally awakened, and they were about to remind the galaxy why their creators had once been the most respected species in known space. The Council chamber was packed with representatives from every major species. On the main display, footage of the ancient ships defeating Unity Empire vessels played on repeat. Captain James and Engineer Miller, The first human representatives to arrive watched in stunned silence. "You're telling us," James said slowly, "that humans built these ships 10,000 years ago?" Reed nodded, all four eyes in sequence. Dr. Blake's translations are clear. These ships are humanity's legacy, waiting to be reclaimed. Miller stepped closer to the display, studying the ship's design. Something about them felt familiar, like remembering a dream. "How do we know they'll even respond to us? We're not the same humans who built them." "There's only one way to find out," Dr. Blake said, leading them toward the shuttle bay. As they approached the ancient fleet in their small shuttle, James felt his heart racing. The massive ships seemed to turn slightly, as if watching them. The closest vessel, easily the size of a small city, opened a docking bay without any command. "They recognize your presence," Reed observed, checking his instruments. "They're already responding to you." The shuttle landed softly in the ancient docking bay. As soon as James and Miller stepped out, lights began activating along the corridors, creating a path for them to follow. "It's like the ship wants us to go somewhere specific," Miller said, his engineer's mind trying to understand the technology surrounding them. They followed the lighted path to what appeared to be a bridge or control center. The moment they entered, every surface lit up with a soft blue glow. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing ship systems, tactical data, and star maps. "Try touching one of the controls," Dr. Blake suggested. Miller reached out tentatively toward what looked like an engineering console. The moment his hand made contact, information flooded his mind. But it wasn't overwhelming. It felt natural, like remembering how to ride a bike. I understand it," he gasped. "All of it. The ships, they're not just responding to us being human. They're teaching us how to use them." James approached the central command position. As he sat down, neural interfaces activated, connecting him directly to the ship's systems. "This is incredible," he whispered. "It's like the ship is part of me. I can feel every system, every weapon, every shield." Reed and Dr. Blake watched in amazement as the two humans quickly mastered controls that had baffled their best scientists for days. "The neural interface," Miller explained, his hands dancing over engineering controls. "It's not just reading our commands. It's reading our intentions, our ethics, our humanity." More displays activated, showing the positions of Unity Empire forces continuing their advance across Council space. The ancient ship's AI presented tactical options, but James noticed something interesting. "Every suggested strategy focuses on disabling, not destroying," he said. "These ships were built by people who understood the true cost of war." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. A massive Unity Empire fleet had just appeared, heading straight for a heavily populated Council world. "We have to do something," Reed said urgently. "Millions of people will die if that fleet reaches its target." James felt the ship's systems responding to his thoughts. More ancient vessels moved into formation around them, their crews of robots and AI waiting for human commands. "Miller, are you seeing these power readings?" James asked, grinning. "Oh yeah," Miller replied, his hands flying over the engineering console. "These ships aren't just advanced, they're practically magic. The Unity Empire is about to learn why you shouldn't judge a fleet by its age." The ancient ships moved in perfect synchronization, their formation like a dance choreographed over millennia. As they accelerated toward the Unity fleet, James felt a deep connection, not just to the ship, but to the humans who had built it. They weren't hiding their power, he realized. They were waiting for us to become the kind of people who would use it wisely. The Unity Empire fleet grew larger in their view screens. The moment of truth had arrived. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity's forgotten legacy could really do. The Unity Empire's fleet filled the view screen, 5,000 ships strong, each one bristling with weapons that had torn through the Council's best defenses. Against them stood just 50 ships of the ancient human fleet, their dark hulls gleaming with soft blue light. "They're hailing us," James said from the command chair, putting it on screen. A Unity Empire commander appeared, his crystalline face showing the arrogant confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Surrender your ancient toys," he demanded, "and we might let you live as slaves." James felt the ship's neural interface translating his thoughts into actions. "You know," he replied calmly, "my ancestors left an interesting message about dealing with bullies." The enemy commander laughed. "And what wisdom did your primitive ancestors have?" "They said, show them enough power to end the fight, but enough mercy to start the peace." Before the Unity commander could respond, James gave the mental command. 50 ancient ships moved in perfect unison, their systems executing plans refined over thousands of years. "Miller, how are the power systems looking?" James asked. "Better than new," Miller replied from engineering. "These ships, they're not just maintaining themselves, they're evolving. Getting better. The self-repair systems are beyond anything I've ever seen." Dr. Blake watched in fascination as displays showed the ancient fleet's strategy unfolding. "They're not just attacking," she observed. "Look at the pattern. They're hurting the enemy ships." She was right. The ancient vessels moved like dancers, their formation creating a complex web of gravitational fields. Unity ships found themselves pushed and pulled by forces they couldn't understand, their previous perfect formation crumbling into chaos. "Weapons are charged," James announced, "but not the kind they're expecting." The ancient ships fired, but instead of explosions, waves of soft golden energy washed over the Unity fleet. Ship after ship went dark, their weapons powering down, their engines stopping. "What are you doing to our ships?" the Unity commander demanded, real fear showing in his crystalline features for the first time. "Teaching them to play nice," Miller replied with a grin. "These aren't just shut-down fields, they're reprogramming your weapons. Good luck trying to make them shoot at civilians again." Reed stepped forward, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. "You're not just stopping them, you're changing them." "That's what these ships were built for," James explained, the neural interface feeding him understanding. "Not to destroy enemies, but to transform them. To end conflicts by making them impossible to continue." The Unity commander's image flickered as his ship's power failed. "This technology, it's impossible." "No," James corrected him. "It's just very, very old. And very, very wise." Within minutes, the entire Unity fleet hung powerless in space. But they weren't dead, just changed. Their weapons had been permanently converted into defensive systems. Their engines would now refuse to power weapons of mass destruction. "Message from the Council," Dr. Blake announced. They're asking if we can do the same thing to their ships." James shared a look with Miller. "They understand," he said softly. "That's what our ancestors were waiting for. Not just for humanity to be ready, but for everyone to be ready." Through the neural interface, James felt the ancient ship's AI, confirming his words. These vessels hadn't been built to win wars or rule the galaxy. They had been built to end the cycle of violence, to give species a chance to grow beyond their warlike instincts. "Send a message to Earth," James ordered. Tell them their ancestors say hello, and that we've finally proven ourselves worthy of their gift." As the disabled Unity ships were towed to safety, James felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity hadn't just reclaimed its ancient legacy, it had proven why that legacy had been entrusted to them in the first place. The age of senseless warfare was ending. The age of wise guardianship was about to begin. 1 month after the Unity Empire's defeat, the council chamber was filled with representatives from every known species. At the center stood James and Miller, along with Reed and Dr. Blake. On massive screens behind them, the ancient fleet hung in formation, its power now recognized by all. "So," the council leader began, "you've accessed more of the original human records. Tell us what you found." James stepped forward. "Our ancestors left us more than just ships. They left us wisdom. 10,000 years ago, Humanity reached the stars and became one of the most powerful civilizations in history. But they saw something that troubled them. What did they see? Asked the Unity Empire's new representative, his crystalline form dimmed with humility. They saw themselves becoming what they feared, Miller answered. Their power grew faster than their wisdom. Rather than risk becoming tyrants, they made an incredible choice. Dr. Blake activated a hologram showing the ancient humans' final message. They erased their civilization, she explained, not out of fear or weakness, but out of remarkable foresight. They wanted their descendants to experience life as the underdog, to learn empathy, to understand the responsibility of power from the ground up. And these ships? The council leader gestured to the fleet outside. Why leave them waiting? Insurance, James said simply. They knew someday the galaxy would face a crisis that required both power and wisdom. The ships weren't just waiting for humans to find them. They were waiting for humans who would use them the right way. Reed stepped forward, his 4 eyes bright with understanding. When the Unity Empire attacked, they could have destroyed them. Instead, Miller finished, the ships gave us a way to end war without destruction, to stop violence without violence, the very thing our ancestors hoped we would learn. On the screens, more ships of various species were undergoing the transformation process. The ancient fleet's technology was being shared, but only with crews who showed the right combination of wisdom and compassion. The neural interfaces don't just check if you're human, James explained. They check if you understand what power is for. They won't work for anyone seeking to dominate or destroy, only for those who want to protect and preserve. The council chamber erupted in discussion as the implications became clear. Humanity hadn't just reclaimed its legacy, it had fulfilled it. There's more, Dr. Blake added, bringing up new translations. The ships contain databases of other technologies, medical advances, clean energy, faster than light travel that doesn't damage space-time. But each one only unlocks when we prove we're ready for it. Your ancestors were very thorough, the council leader observed. James smiled. They had to be. They didn't want to give us shortcuts. They wanted us to earn our way back to the stars, to learn the lessons they feared they had learned too late. Miller brought up an engineering diagram. The ships aren't even at full power yet. They're still evolving, still waiting to show us more, but only as fast as we can handle it. And what happens now? Asked the Unity representative. Now, James said, we do what our ancestors hoped we would. We become guardians, not conquerors. We help other species grow, not force them to submit. We prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our ships. It's our capacity to learn from our mistakes, Miller finished. Outside the council chamber, the ancient fleet continued its patrol of now peaceful space. The ships that had once made empires tremble now served as protectors, their very presence a reminder of humanity's choice. They were no longer just relics of the past. They were beacons of the future, a future where power served wisdom and strength protected peace. The galaxy had laughed at the ancient fleet until they realized humans built it. But the real surprise hadn't been who built the ships, it had been why. And in proving worthy of their ancestors' legacy, humanity had given the galaxy something even greater than powerful weapons or advanced technology. They had given it hope.